Okay, welcome to the
Welcome.
podcast, the Take Two podcast. in
Living
full
up to the
effect
name today.
Yeah. So today's gonna be a little more freeform, but I think it's kind of going back to the root of the podcast where Andy and I on Sundays used to just get together and talk about movies,
Yeah.
and we'd say we should just have a podcast so we can record these conversations,
Yeah.
and that's really what we're going to do today. We
It
haven't
is.
talked all week about
No.
movies. I have seen several movies, and so
I have
we're
not.
like,
So-
we're like, let's have a conversation about these movies just like we would before we started filming and recording
Yeah.
ourselves doing these things. So you guys are truly going to get to see what it's like for just two movie nerds to get together and
Yeah,
talk
these are
about movies.
Exactly what our conversations used to be like before there were microphones in front of our face.
Yeah. So where I wanted to start today is I just want to say how much I have fallen back in love with the theater experience.
You are just living at the theater lately.
I really am. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have a social life. Let's just be very clear about
That's okay.
that. I work, I teach, I coach basketball, and when I have nights off,
You're at the movies.
it's kind of like I don't know what else to do with myself other than go to the movies because that's all I really like want to do right now. I was telling somebody that this podcast has exposed to me. I already knew I was a movie nerd, just how much of a movie nerd I am. Because I will go see movies thinking just like, oh, I want to talk about them on the podcast or do like a quick review or something. But what I'm discovering is as I'm watching these movies and then afterwards I'm like trying to give them a grade, I'm surprised at the grades I'm giving some of these movies. And I'm like, am I just getting like too nice or something? And then what I'm realizing is the theater experience gives these movies that aren't that good a bump
It does.
in enjoyment. And I realized if I was watching it at home on my TV screen and I feel okay getting out my phone and messing around with it, which I don't do at all in a theater, I would, like a lot of these movies, I would get my phone out and start messing around on my phone and stop paying attention to the movie and be like, okay, the movie's just kind of whatever, and it's just on in the background, and then I don't enjoy it. But when I don't do that, when I'm in the theater and I'm immersed in it and I just stick with the movie, I end up enjoying it so much more that way.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why I'm falling back in love with theater and being like, I will just see, so much more in the theater than I even would at home. It kind of has flip-flop for me. It used to be like, I'll only go see the special movies in the theater, and then I just, maybe when it's available at home, I'll watch these other movies. But now I don't feel that way at all. So, I'll kind of jump in. I saw 5 movies in the theater this week. I saw 2 on Wednesday, 2 on Friday, and 1 more on Saturday.
That's amazing.
And I'm going to jump with the last one to make this point. The last one I saw was The Beekeeper, which is the Jason Statham action movie. And Jason Statham movies, I hardly see them because they're all sort of the
you know
same.
what you're getting.
Yes, they are a Jason Statham movie. I say I hardly see them because I'm like seen it. I saw that a couple times.
Yeah.
I saw it in The Transporter. I saw it in The Mechanic. I saw it in The Expendables. I saw all of these. But here I am going like, I need something to see in the theater. I've seen most of the other things that I would be interested in seeing. Let's just go see The Beekeeper and see how it is. And I ended up enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe that I'm saying that this is I think I was like, what do I give this? Maybe a B or something? And I'm like, am I really talking about giving a B to the Beekeeper? And a movie that like objectively is not a great movie. And I'm like, if I watch this at home, guarantee it's not higher than a C.
See, yeah.
But something about sitting in that theater and watching that movie just heightened the experience so much.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to start by singing the praises of movie theaters that I love the experience.
Yeah. I second that. I never really fell out of love with the movie theater experience, but because of doing this pod, I have made more. And sometimes it's just like timing with your life situation. Like my kids are getting older. Not that I don't need to be around, but they're off doing their own things and they have jobs and social lives and all these things. So I'm finding more time to get to the theater. And yeah, it's just the way movies are supposed to be seen. And I was never big into the whole, straight to Netflix or straight to any kind of streaming, but especially since doing this podcast with you, I agree with you. Like, I'm not able to go as frequently as you are, but I did like my 3 in one day not too long ago. I snuck up to see Godzilla -1. I got up to see Anyone But You, and you're just going like, this is the way it's supposed to be. And I'm so glad for a number of reasons that we do this podcast, but just to, and like I said, not that my love for the theater was ever gone, but
Right.
just to really hammer home, like, this is what I love to do. This is my thing. This is my hobby, and I love it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, there's never a time where I was like, I'm out on theaters, but the drive to get there, the cost of it, like I said, I sort of reserved it for those special movies that, like, I know I need to see this one in theaters, and then it was like, the rest I'll wait. And now that I'm doing that AMC membership thing where I get the 3 tickets a week, I'm like, I'm seeing a lot more movies that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And what I'm finding is how much the theater helps those.
Yeah.
You know, before is when I'm seeing movies that I know I'm going to like in theaters, I'm like, yes, theaters are awesome, but also like I knew I was going to like this movie. When I'm seeing movies that I'm like, I don't think I'm even really going to like this, but let's see it. And then I end up enjoying the experience. That's when I go, okay, it's the theater. That's what it is. Yeah. That's the difference maker right there is the theater, is the immersion, the like sensory deprivation as far as like, I'm not going to be distracted visually by anything else but what's on the screen. I'm not going to be really hearing anything else other than occasionally the obnoxious snack eater that's in the theater with me. And it just locks you into that world so much more that even a bad movie you can just get lost in.
Oh, absolutely. I agree completely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Beekeeper.
Let's talk about the Beekeeper.
Yeah. My main takeaway from that movie is we did our 80s action movie draft. You know, we talked about how they just don't make movies like that anymore. And not to say that it's an 80s action movie, but it just made me realize, like, in spirit, some of that's still alive. Like, Statham is a product of, like, the Schwarzenegger Stallone style of movie. And because my thought was, if there's a target demographic for this movie, The Beekeeper, it's my dad. My dad loves the just tough action hero who shows up and just beats up the bad guys and
walks off into the sunset at the end.
And it's like you're never in doubt who's going to win.
No.
You know he's the biggest, toughest, baddest guy, and he's just going to give them their comeuppance. And it's, you know, and it's why I say, like, the target demographic is my dad. It's because that is his type of movie. He will tell you that's my favorite type of movie, is where the good guy just wins and he kicks their butts and there's no question. I also enjoy that kind of movie.
Sure.
So, you know, it's not like I'm saying it's just for my dad. I'm just saying he is, like, I walked out and I wanted to text and say, hey, Dad, when you get a chance to see The Beekeeper, you're going to like it. You're going to enjoy that movie.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. Excuse me. I'm all for that style of movie making a comeback. I really am. And yeah, I don't care who the guy is that has to do it. Let Statham do it. That's fine with me. I want so, you know, it was like, for a minute it seemed like Liam Neeson was going to do it.
Right.
And then he kind of just went too far with it. And then it was just like, felt like for a while there, every other weekend, the new generic Liam Neeson action movie was coming out.
The thing I think really failed for him, and part of it is just, you know, I don't hold it against him. He's old when he got into that genre. When he did Taken, he was already old. He can't really do the action fighting scene. So, like, it's always edited, just butchered up.
It's so choppy.
Like
and
he's doing all. Whereas Statham, like,
he can still get it
that
done.
dude is, like, he pulls off the action. Now, one thing I said in my little Instagram review has not come out yet, but I've actually already made it for that movie, is that I think Statham actually is a better actor than he gets credit for. Granted, I think it's mostly his fault that he doesn't get more credit. I think
because he's staying in this
lane. I think if he wanted to take on some more, like, real acting type roles, I'm not telling you he'd be Daniel Day-Lewis, but I think he'd be pretty good. I still think back to, like, when I first saw Jason Statham was in the movie Snatch. Yeah. And he is not playing the tough guy in that movie. He's actually playing the, like, he's like normal a character guy. Yeah. And I remember him being good. And I remember being surprised when the next movie I saw him in was, like, The Transporter. And I'm like, wait, the guy from Snatch who's normal is now an action hero?
Yeah, and he's just stayed in that lane forever.
And I'm like, I think he actually could have been, like, sort of the charming, like, you know, he's got great line delivery and stuff. And he could have played more diverse parts. Probably just wouldn't have, like, he probably made the right decision to play just that one part for the success of his career for financial reasons, to be a
Right.
box office draw, to be a leading man. He probably made the right choice. But I would be fascinated to see Jason Statham
Try a little
try
dramatic.
something a little, you know, and it could still even be in the action genre. Just get into a more like prestige filmmakers action movie and see what you can do in that world.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, he's like you said with his line delivery, he's in the Fast and Furious spin-off movie with The Rock, which I'm not saying is a good movie or anything, but it's like his back and forth with The Rock. Like he can do the comedy and the funny lines, and it doesn't feel like he's like it kind of comes naturally, like that sarcasm and the witty back and forth and stuff. Like it, yeah, he's good at it. So yeah,
Yeah. Also, notable about the Beekeeper is I'm pretty sure about this. I could be wrong, but I think it is the first movie directed by David Ayer since he did 2016's The Suicide Squad, which was, everyone knows, a huge mess.
that's a fiasco.
A lot of studio interference. And so
it's like he's still mad about that to this
and
day.
and it's really unclear, you know, how much to blame him or not blame him.
Yeah. I can tell you he blames the studio.
He certainly does. The thing I'll say is like, you know, if it, you know, like half the movie was reshot, but I'm not sitting there going like, well, half the movie was really good. So, you know, I don't know if there was a good movie in his cut or not.
He thinks there was.
He sure thinks there was, but I think it made me more curious about this movie, this generic Statham action movie that he was doing it. Cause I was like, okay, what is David Ayer doing coming out of that mess to sort of like reestablish himself or reintroduce himself? And I'll be totally honest, like, was it a well-directed movie for what it was? Sure. There was never a point where I was like, oh man, David Ayers came back and he is directing his butt off.
Yeah,
and showing
but it
them
also
what's
wasn't
for.
a mess.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It just sort of was like, this is a well-made Jason Statham action movie.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, I kind of went in like, I'm curious. I'm not sure what to think about David Ayer. I leave going, you know what? I'm still not sure what to think about David Ayer. Like, he's done some movies I really enjoyed. Fury, the Brad Pitt tank
really good movie.
I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
He's done some movies I haven't really loved. You know, Suicide Squad I didn't love, but also he did Sabotage, which was a late career Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a mess, and I just
Late
didn't
career
enjoy it.
Arnold is a bummer.
Yeah. So interesting guy. I've seen him interviewed too.
Yeah, too.
And I don't know. Just I never know what to think. His movies, how he comes across as a person. Just an interesting guy.
Yeah. Well, you wonder too, like if he wanted to do something, you know, after being in that DC world and he hated it and he really is bitter about it. If something like The Beekeeper, which is just kind of this, you know, it's original. It's not, you know, it's not coming from the comic book world or any kind of pre-existing world.
Yeah, the studio was not going to like really meddle and be like, this has to be our big hit.
Yeah. And it came out.
This is Jason Statham's The Beekeeper. Okay, we can't have you messing this up.
We have a clear vision for the, you know, and it came out like late January, I think.
Yeah.
So wonder if that was a choice on his part. Like, I don't want all this attention on my movie. I just kind of want to do my quiet, you know, for an action movie without a ton of buzz behind it. Something he felt like he could be left alone and just do his movie.
Yeah. And, you know, not to read too much in the movie, but last year we talked a lot about how it seemed to be the year of directors making movies that also said something about where they are in their life. And it makes you wonder if an action movie about a guy who's like the system's out of whack and those in power are corrupt and I've got to like reset the system. Isn't where he's going like, yes, I like this character. I feel this guy.
Yeah, it could be.
You know, maybe. So I'm kind of working my way backwards here.
That's fine.
The second movie I saw on Friday night was a movie. This one is a prime example of a movie I would not have previously gone to see in theaters and maybe wouldn't have seen at all, and that's Lisa Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Lisa Frankenstein, I just obviously not the target demographic for that movie. And when I saw the preview, I was like, it looks quirky. It looks kind of weird. Same. I don't know. Like
I saw a preview for it at Anyone But You, and I was like, you know, there's some funny moments in the trailer, and
it also kind of looked familiar from even movies that I haven't really even seen. I heard another reviewer say that he saw the preview and it made him think like, oh, it's kind of like Warm Bodies, which is a movie I didn't see, but I was like, yeah, it does. Like
it's
I feel
got
like
that feel to it.
I feel like when I saw the preview for that movie, it's, you know, and I didn't watch that one, so why am I going to watch this one? It was written by Diablo Cody. And Diablo Cody's kind of famous for bursting onto the scene with Juno, winning an Oscar for that screenplay, and then
she's never been able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, like I've seen a couple of her films since then, and I'm always like,
she
not
did
for me.
Jennifer's Body.
Yeah, she did Young Adult,
Charlize Theron,
and another movie Charlize Theron, I think called Tully or something like that was her last movie she did. But
I've never connected with her movies.
Yeah. But I did think like this is a sort of
like they're smart
hipster type movie that would fit maybe her particular proclivities. And then, but again, probably why I wouldn't have seen it under normal circumstances or old circumstances, I should say.
Right.
But again, I was like, it's the newest movie. What gets me to the movies now is it original? Like that's pretty much what gets me to the movies now.
Yeah.
If you're original and
I'll give you a shot.
Yeah, I'll give you a shot. Now, there's still some exceptions to that. I don't see a lot of animated movies. Just, again, some animated movies are good, but that's just not the movie I want to go by myself as an adult male and go be like, I'm going to go see Migration. I just have not seen that.
No.
And I was, you know me, I'm still not big into the horror genre.
Right.
I'll go see maybe some, but I'm just a scaredy cat, so that's not going to be what I'm drawn to. But other than that, original content, I'm in.
Yeah.
So there was an original movie, and I'm like, I'm going to go see it. It was directed by Zelda Williams.
Yes.
And I didn't learn until after the fact that that's the daughter of Robin Williams.
Yes.
And I was like, that's really cool.
That is cool. Is this her? Has she directed?
It's her first feature-length film.
Okay.
So I'm happy to report, like, I actually had a lot of fun with this movie. It was different than I expected.
Sure.
It takes place in the 80s, which I'm like, of course it does, because everything takes place in the 80s now in film and television.
It does.
I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is it's easier to tell stories that are crazy without the internet or cell phones being in existence because they would just so simply
so many problems could be solved with a text.
They'd solve the problems, or like it just messes up your believability that things could happen and not be.
But there is something charming about a movie that harkens back to that era where it's like, oh, this was nice. Yeah.
And then also, I think people are just nostalgic for the aesthetic and the music and all of that. So
people love, you're right. Films love to go back to the 80s.
Yeah. And so, it's taking place in the 80s, and it's a kind of dark, edgy movie. I have a review for that I haven't put out yet. I said in my review, I walked out of the movie and I was like, I don't know what that was rated. I don't know what the movie I just watched was rated. And in my head, I was kind of like, I'm guessing it was rated R, I guess, because it's got that kind of dark edginess to it. And then when I looked it up and it was PG-13, I was like, oh. But I guess that makes sense because the target demographic, like, it's a teen movie.
Yeah.
So,
you want teens to be able to go see it.
If you want teens to be able to go see your movie, you've got to keep it PG-13. So it was kind of a weird movie in that regard.
Unfortunately, nobody went to see it.
Yeah.
I just read the box office before I came over here. And it tanked.
The main girl that's in it, Catherine Newton, she was in the movie Freaky. That's what I knew her from.
Good movie.
A body swap movie with
Vince Vaughn,
where it's honestly, like, she does some similar things in both movies where at first she's sort of like a socially outcast kind of girl.
Yeah.
And then she gets to, like, gain confidence and, like, become...
She's a good actress.
I think she's really charming. Like, I watched it and I kind of thought, like, not quite to the level I did with Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney and Anyone But You, where I watched that those are 2 stars.
Mega stars, yeah.
But with her, I thought she's going to be a star. Not a superstar like those two, but a star.
Well, she just got cast. She's Ant-Man's daughter now in the MCU.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the way the MCU is these days, who knows how long that'll continue. But
yeah.
So she was in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. I mean, my point is, like, Hollywood is trying to make her happen.
Right. And it tells you something about Ant-Man and the Wasp that I totally forgot I had seen her in that movie. But when I saw her, my first thought was, hey, it's the girl from Freaky, which was this like small movie nobody saw.
Ant-Man and the Wasp was very forgettable.
Totally did not remember that she was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Or Quantumania. Yeah, Ant-Man.
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Is it? Yeah.
Or is it called I think it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
I think you're right.
Which also speaks to the impact of that movie that we don't even know what the actual name of it is.
Yeah, for sure.
No, but I think she's one of those actresses that's like, she's just one role away from really breaking through.
Yeah.
And unfortunately it doesn't look like it'll be Lisa Frankenstein, just as far as box office or attention that's on that movie. But Some movies like that, though, they do kind of over the years gain that cult following.
And
like those quirky movies that underperform at the box office, sometimes they will slowly gain a reputation over the years.
Yeah, and especially because I think I said it wasn't what I was expecting. I think it's probably going to be true for a lot of people. Now, I don't know if that is necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but I think when you're hoping to have a big box office run, it probably is helpful if it's what people are expecting.
Mm-hmm.
For the cult following, it's usually more helpful if it's not what people are expecting. So I think you're right about that.
I'm not saying it will, but oftentimes movies like that that is what ends up happening with them.
Yeah. So
kind of what happened with Jennifer's Body.
Yeah, that's true.
Like it tanked bad. And you read stuff now where it's like people are like reevaluating the movie, and you know what, Megan Fox is really good in that movie, and you see that kind of stuff, and it does happen.
Yeah, which I never watched that one, and I don't know.
I didn't mind it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like when it came out, I think I didn't see it because everybody's like, oh, it's a terrible movie, and now like I hear what you hear, which is like people are going back and saying it was misunderstood and it's so much better.
I think if I remember right, it was one of those movies that there was some kind of studio interference, and the story coming out of it is like, well, this isn't exactly what I wanted, one of those type of deals, or there's like an alternate version and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. So I don't know. I just Lisa's Frankenstein was fun. That's what I left going. Like I enjoyed it because I had no idea where it was going to go.
Sure.
All throughout the movie,
which is a treat because you don't get that. I mean, a lot of times, even just from the trailers, you basically know the general outline of the movie from start to finish. So.
Yeah, I mean, even from the preview, I thought, oh, this is a weird she created a Frankenstein monster to be like her boyfriend, and it's actually not that at all.
Oh, nice.
So
yeah, I'll probably give it a shot. Yeah. I love the title too.
Yeah,
I just like the title, Lisa Frankenstein.
Yeah,
even a lot of movies are just paint by the numbers and boring, and that includes their title. So something Lisa Frankenstein, that's fun and it's different. So
yeah, I enjoyed that one. All right, sort of the main course here. Mm-hmm. The movie I saw first on my double feature Friday night was Matthew Vaughn's newest feature, Argylle.
Yeah.
You talked about Lisa Frankenstein not performing.
Whew.
Argylle has really not performed to
it's
expectations.
A bomb. Worldwide too, because a lot of times something will bomb in the U.S., but it'll even out overseas, and this is bombing in both places. I did a little research. $200 million budget, and I think after today, worldwide, it's made like $60 million.
Yeah, it is not.
It's going to be a big loss.
It has not done well. So let's start here with that. It is. I had not put these pieces together until I heard someone say it. It's the third Apple movie
in a row
to have like a $200 million budget and not
underperform,
make a lot of money. Again, that does not mean they're bad movies.
No, because Killers of the Flower Moon is one of them. Napoleon being the other, and all this.
Yes, but it does make you wonder if Apple, their execs. Apple's, they print money, but still, there's a point where you're going like, okay, our strategy is not working. Whatever we've been doing for whatever reason, and they haven't been bad gambles. Like giving that money to Martin Scorsese is not like everyone's going, well, you should have seen that coming. No. Giving it to Ridley Scott to make a biopic about Napoleon doesn't seem like a bad investment. Give it to Matthew Vaughn to say, make one of your crazy spy movies. Doesn't seem like a bad investment.
But they're not.
It's just, for whatever reason, those three movies didn't hit with audiences, which I understand Napoleon.
Oh, definitely. And I will say, since I'm a Killers of the Flower Moon defender, it did end up worldwide at 180 million.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's not even an Apple problem. This is just a big problem, and we've alluded to it before, where movie budgets are just completely out of control.
Yeah.
I talked a couple weeks ago, I was reading about Indiana Jones this past summer. That movie had a $295 million budget. And, more to it, you don't just have to hit that $295 million to break even. You have to exceed. What do they say? It's like you have to exceed your budget by like $100 or $150 million, I think, before you start talking about like true true profitability.
Yeah. So I think it's like you have to exceed by 50% of the budget or something like that. So when it's like 200 something million, you got to make 100 something million.
Yeah. So
more
than that. Yeah. So it's like it's not a gamble necessarily to give Martin Scorsese and DiCaprio $200 million, but to expect audiences to go see that movie enough to blow past $200 million for a 3.5 hour movie about the Osage Indian. You know what I mean? Like, I think the just studios' ideas of what they can pay for a movie are just really out of control.
Yeah. So it just really raises some interesting questions about what does get audiences to theaters, because as we're talking about this, I'm going like, yes, I 100% get why enough people didn't go to Killers of the Flower Moon, because we've talked about this before. Who really drives the market with movies is teenagers. They've got the expendable time and money to go see movies. Both Killers of the Flower Moon and Napoleon were made for adults, and adults will go see movies. They just don't go see movies in a way that gives you the $1 billion movie.
Right.
They go, you maybe get 100 million on an adult, a movie that's made for adults.
Right.
That's what makes Argylle surprising. Argylle seems more like the type of movie that teenagers would flock to.
Like big groups of them, like, or, like a date situation or something. Like, yeah, you would think, but.
Yeah. I'll get into it a little bit. Do I think Argylle was a good movie? No, not particularly.
Yeah.
But I did have fun watching it. So it was not I didn't walk out going like, man, Argylle's good. You need to go see Argylle. But I didn't walk out going like, man, what a disaster.
Dud, yeah.
And so, I'm like, Argylle is better than many of the Transformers movies. It's better than many of the Marvel movies that I've seen. The lower end, it's good enough that I would think those same audiences that are going to those movies would go to Argylle for all the same reasons. Big, shiny, spectacle, whatever. The thing it doesn't have that those movies have is the IP, the name recognition. And I'm like, is that really the difference? Now, I would love to attribute it to just smart audiences, but we know that's not the case.
Right.
Mean Girls is still raking in the dough. So it's not smart audiences, and I'm sorry to pick on Mean Girls and those who like Mean Girls, but
Come on, that movie's
it's just repackaged. That's all it is. It's a repackaging.
Yeah.
What is it about this movie that people were not drawn to?
I know this is a movie guy podcast, and we're supposed to have the answers, but I don't. And I suggested this morning that we talk about like how bad Argylle failed. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or because you have to throw in all these different factors now, streaming and, you still hear once in a while about like how the pandemic has just changed movie going and different things like that. I felt like I used to have a pretty good handle. I could kind of, you could say like, okay, I think this movie's going to open. Seems like the kind of movie that's going to open to whatever, $30 million. And I wasn't always right. And I wasn't always right on the nose, but I felt like I used to be able to get it pretty good. And now box office has become a mystery to me. It really has, especially over the last year or so, where you just, like, you see something like Argylle and you're like, okay, I'm sure that's, I didn't think it was going to break any records or anything, but what did it open to, like 17 million or something like that?
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It was really, really bad. Yeah. So, like, it's not like this movie's underperforming. I mean, this movie is a flat-out bomb.
So I've got it pulled up right here.
Yeah, what is it?
Its total gross so far is just under 29 million.
Yeah, in the U.S.
Yeah, that is wild. Wonka is over 200 million.
And this weekend, so this is a Sunday when we're recording this, Argylle, in its second weekend, it made $6 million.
Yes.
So it's on its way out. I mean, it's not going to be but it's going to have some legs. It dropped like 65% from last weekend to this weekend. Next weekend, it'll be like $2 or $3 million at best, and then it'll be gone. So that's the thing. It's like this is not just a box office disappointment. This is a flat out failure that people are not going to see. So you're right. It does open up a lot of questions. I mean, and I hate the thought of thinking that we only live in a world where stuff with pre-existing or known IP can succeed. I mean, that's a bad thought, because that automatically closes the door on, an influx of original content and original movies. Mm-hmm. And stuff like this does set a bad, it's going to cause studios to be like, we're going to pump the brakes on this, original fun action movie that we thought was going to be a success. Because like I said, the biggest thing with Argylle is not just that it's not succeeding, it is failing miserably. So, and the box office has just become really unpredictable to me. And this year we've seen, like you and I talked privately, like Book of Clarence, which you really liked.
Yeah.
Miserable failure. I mean, bad.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I wish I knew more about the finances of streaming services, because there used to also be like movies maybe having a second life and making a lot of money on DVD sales and that sort of thing.
And now
that's not a thing anymore. So I don't know if there's a chance for these movies to like bounce back in the streaming area, but I don't think they do.
I don't think so either.
And so, like that really is what I'm worried about is where are movies going and maybe it's not as dire as I think it is, because maybe what's going to happen is Argylle will no longer be a $200 million movie, and in the future, maybe they get $50 million to make Argylle. And you know what? I'm not sure if Matthew Vaughn only had $50 million, the movie would have been any worse. And so maybe I'm over worried that like the hidden budget is going to be this big deal, and maybe it won't be. Mm-hmm. Maybe it will actually force more creativity out of the filmmakers. And that would be the
best case scenario.
Yeah. So like, so that's my hope. Is all this worry is for naught, but. The flip side of that is the worry that just filmmakers are going to go and pitch. They have this original idea, and studios are going to be
immediately shot down.
Original idea. Why would you do that when we've got all?
And now
this
the studios
IP?
Can cite movies like The Book of Clarence or Argylle and stuff and be like, look at the numbers. Yeah, people did not go out to see these movies.
Yeah, I am really anxious and curious to see how Madam Web does this coming weekend.
I am too.
Just in the context of this conversation of
because that is numbers. Some pre-existing IP.
Yeah,
I mean it's not like Marvel Spider-Man type stuff, but it's like a third cousin of that stuff, and
again has that look like we think it looks about the equivalent of Transformers 5, but Transformers 5 made a lot of money, so. Could Madam Web make a lot of money?
Yeah, and like I said, in the old days, I would confidently be like, I bet it makes X amount to X amount of money and probably get pretty close. Now, who knows? Yeah. I don't know. And I hate to say like I'm actively rooting against a movie, but, if something like Madam Web does come out and bomb and get terrible reviews, which we think it will, because we've talked a lot, even on this podcast, about how bad that movie looks, maybe that's a good lesson too for studios, where it's like, okay, Marvel succeeded for a long time, massively succeeded. And so you can't just keep doing these knockoff, like, I don't want to say they're ripoffs, but just like we're just really riding the coattails of something that was really successful. And
yeah, you're scraping the barrel. Like
there you go.
You've had all the like quality stuff, and now
what else is down there that we can. One thing I thought about in the context of Argylle failing so badly, now I'm really interested, and I really hope that The Fall Guy is a good movie and succeeds. Because that would be a nice rebound for like the original action genre.
Yeah, it's kind of action comedy combination.
So I hope that can succeed where Argylle failed at the box office, just to kind of prove, there is an audience for this stuff.
Yeah. And maybe what we look back on with Argylle, the lesson learned is it has the appearance of a stacked cast. But maybe what we learned is it doesn't really have a cast that quite draws audiences like some of these other movies.
Mhm.
Ryan Gosling is a different beast
than
anybody in this movie. Like
Henry
Henry
Cavill.
Cavill is probably the most star power right now of anybody in the Argylle cast, which is why he's pushed front and center, even though he's not in a ton of the
Oh, he's
movie.
not.
And I think, the real leads in the movie are Sam Rockwell and Bryce Dallas Howard. And as much as I love Sam Rockwell, he's probably actually one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Those are not two people whose names, there's a reason they didn't put them front and center on the poster. And you kind of go down the line, you're like, stat cast, but like, is Bryan Cranston really a theater draw? Is even John Cena hasn't really been
He hasn't
a big,
he does well
draw
like
theater.
in supporting roles, and people think he's funny and stuff, but he hasn't proven to be a.
So it may end up proving to be that's the lesson is like, if you want to make one of these movies, you have to have a star the level of a Ryan Gosling, which again gets back to the Madam Web question. I don't think Dakota Johnson's that person, but could the power of Sydney Sweeney get audiences going to that movie in greater numbers than you would expect?
Exactly. Because it's funny, you talk about box office and stuff, and Sydney Sweeney's movie is succeeding massively. Anyone But You.
Yeah, it's made just over $80 million in the U.S. so far.
And with probably a fraction of the budget, and it's just kept it opened, I think, right before Christmas or right at Christmas.
And it's
just every weekend, it's just solid. So I don't think it's ever been number one at the box office, but it just keeps plugging along, and people want to go see it, and people are going back to see it. So, and that's another case where it doesn't have to make $450 million.
Yeah.
It's made, I think worldwide, I looked today, it's made like $170 million worldwide. And I guarantee you that movie's already well into profit. So I don't know what the ultimate takeaway is. I think number one is we got to control these budgets a little bit.
Yeah. And the thing that we haven't really talked about with that is it still shocks me how many movies are coming out that you read that, this was in production during COVID, and that has inflated, all the struggles of COVID inflated the cost. And eventually we'll get through all that slate, and it won't be a thing anymore. And maybe that helps budgets come back.
You might be right.
Bit.
You might be right.
Know,
That's a good point.
I think all three of the movies that we mentioned for Apple all were
they had
affected
COVID.
by,
yes, you're right.
COVID.
You're exactly right.
Breaks and having to work around it.
That's a nice thought too, to think like maybe this is just a bad, it's a phase that we're almost out of.
Yeah.
Now, I did read some good box office news where there's good projections for Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
It has good projections, which of course that can change, but it's projected to open well. So, it's not all gloom, but you really do wonder, and like someone who cares so much about movies and movies performing in the movie theater, I do hate to see, and I'll say it again, like Book of Clarence and Argylle, even though I didn't see those movies, not just underperform, but just completely fail in every possible way as far as attendance and box office. It's disappointing.
Yeah. So the one thing I feel like I need to say about Argylle before we move on from the discussion of just box office is it was fun. It was not a great movie. Like it was not Matthew Vaughn's best. So when it gets the criticism from like critics, I get that. I think just the disappointing surprise for me for people seeing it is that it was at least it was a movie taking a big swing.
Yeah.
It was trying things like it. The thing about Matthew Vaughn that I kind of respect, even though it doesn't always work, is he is like, I think this is going to look cool, and I'm going to go for it. I don't care that like there's a good chance it's going to be stupid, and people are going to go like, dude, seriously? He goes
for it. He does.
And I've said multiple times, Matthew Vaughn makes movies that I think 13-year-old me, Matthew Vaughn would be my favorite filmmaker.
Oh, yeah.
Because 13-year-old me didn't care about the logic. If it looked cool, I'm in. And that's Matthew Vaughn. Like, if it looks cool, he's like, we're doing it.
Yeah, you can't fault him. I mean, he definitely has an eye for what looks cool up on the screen.
Yeah.
You can't fault him for that.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, it's weird to say a movie that I didn't love that much, I still feel bad for so underperforming.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, like you said, it's got a lot of big names in it.
Yeah.
And, likable actors and actresses. And, and you hate to see it, but...
Yeah. And, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that it's a movie that clearly sets itself up to have sequels.
it's not going to happen. There's
It's
0% chance.
It would be very shocking. The only way it would happen is if the studio had already sunk money into a sequel before this one came out.
Well, we got to follow through with it.
Although, man, we could talk about the sort of new trend. I think it's a new trend. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just we hear about it more now, where studios make movies and then shelve them and use them as some sort of tax write-off, and they just never see the light of day. That, it blows my mind. I don't know how that works. Or it should. To me, it should never be financially beneficial to just not release a movie in any form whatsoever.
I'm glad you brought this up. I was just reading an article about this today.
Yeah.
It's got John Cena in it. Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner movie.
Yeah.
It's done. It's filmed. It's edited. It's complete. And I was just reading. It's like that movie just may never be seen by anybody. I'm like, wait, what? Like, I've been a movie fan my whole life. I've never heard of this until recently. And then there's a Netflix movie with Halle Berry in it that Netflix is like, yeah, sorry. Like, we're just not. We need to go back and do reshoots, and we can't. And it's like a sci-fi movie, and it's just they're just like, it'll just never be released. That is crazy to me. Like, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around this.
Yeah, I think isn't there like famously like a Batgirl movie that happened with that they shot and filmed and people are like, oh, it's good.
Is like Brendan Fraser or somebody in it. I think he's in it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, everyone's just like, well, that movie will just never be seen.
So yeah, I was also reading a little something about that, and somebody was making the points, and I was like, these are good points that like that is just not fair to the people who worked on these movies, who put all their time into these movies.
Yeah.
And how in the world can we incentivize to movie studios through, I don't know what kind of tax breaks they get. That's what I read is they're shelving it and taking the tax break or whatever. How can we incentivize just putting a movie away like that and saying we're going to give you any kind of financial assistance that comes from the government, I guess, comes from taxpayer expenses? Like, put it out, make what you can, and if you need some, I don't know, just how can we credit them for doing nothing with it?
It's weird. And like, I was reading about this Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner movie, and John Cena's in it. And it's like, it came down to like $75 million, which obviously is a lot of money. But in the Hollywood world, it's not. I mean, it's like, I think they were wanting to sell it to they even tried to sell it to like Netflix. And they were asking $75 million for this movie. When you talk about movies like Indiana Jones needing to make $450 million to even be profitable, 75 doesn't seem like it's a risk, but it doesn't seem like an impossible hill to climb.
Yeah.
Like John Cena's popular, tapping into, like, I grew up watching Roadrunner and Coyote. So I'm not saying I would like that movie or I would rush out to see it, but it'd pique my interest a little bit. I don't know. It's weird. And like I said, same thing. I was just reading about this movie for Netflix with Halle Berry, where it's just like, yeah, that movie, it's gone. Like, we're just never going to see it. I'm like, what? This is weird. Like, Halle Berry won an Oscar, and now she just did a movie, and it's just never going to be released.
Yeah.
And the Batgirl one's really weird because 700 superhero movies a year come out. Like, how did Wonder Woman 1984 come out, but Batgirl's so bad that
it's not like the DCU had a sterling reputation. They were like,
we can't have our name sullied by Batgirl. Like, I don't know. It's really weird, and I hope that is not something that continues. I hope that is somehow stopped ASAP.
Absolutely, man. So can I read to you the top grossing movies from this past weekend?
Please do.
So Argylle was number one. People were just not going to movies.
It was like $6 million, right?
That's one thing I'll say was shocking to me. So I went, like I said, saw a double feature on Friday, saw a movie on Saturday. Both times I went to two different theaters, and there was like hardly anybody at these theaters. And I was like, this is the weekend, right? Like, where are the people? They just weren't at the theater. I know that's just two theaters here in central Illinois, but the numbers bear out that people were not going to see movies. So Argylle was number one, grossing just $6.5 million this weekend.
Bad.
That's a bad weekend for a top grossing movie, and it's that's as big as it was. Mm-hmm. Lisa Frankenstein was number two at $3.8 million. The Beekeeper was number 3.
Yeah, it's sticking around. How much has it made?
It's made $54 million.
Yeah.
That it's still like that's really shocking though. Like it's been out for like
a few weeks.
Yeah,
it's got some legs to it.
At number 4 was The Chosen, season 4, episodes 1 through 3.
That's weird to me too.
Just over 3 million.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into a whole discussion about that, but I don't
I don't understand.
Number 4. Number 5, Wonka. Still in the top 5.
Did that movie come out
just over 3 million
between Thanksgiving and Christmas, right?
I don't even remember, but again, over the 200 million mark.
And this is just in the U.S. These numbers are that you're reading.
Yeah.
So it's had legs. I think it's like worldwide. I think it's getting close to like $500 million.
And that's,
I mean, it's a win for Chalamet
for sure.
For sure, and I like him, but. We talked about before, just neither one of us could convince ourselves to go see Wonka.
No.
It was playing on that night that I went to see 3 movies. It was playing at the same time. My choice was Ferrari or Wonka, and I very easily chose Ferrari.
Yeah. 6 was Migration. 7, Anyone But You. 8, Mean Girls, which just won't go away. 9, American Fiction. 10, Poor Things. I'm okay with both of those.
Me too.
Maybe the most shocking thing to still see on here. Made over $1 million this weekend. And number 11, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Good grief.
So, like, thinking about it this way, Aquaman in whatever week that it's in.
It came out like the 19th of December or something like that.
Like this is almost 2 months later of a movie that was a bomb.
Yeah.
Still almost made as much this weekend as Lisa Frankenstein in its opening weekend.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that we're talking about where it's like the power of IP versus the power of a small original movie. It's an overwhelmingly unfair fight. And you know what? In the end, Lisa Frankenstein might end up being a moderate success because I don't know what the budget was.
I'm sure it was very small. I bet it was
and Aquaman
15 or 20.
Isn't. So it's not like I'm saying Aquaman is a success.
No, Aquaman probably cost $800 million to make.
But the gross, the what people are going to see is still going to be in favor of
always
Aquaman.
And that's always going to be a hard battle to fight. But, and I should have done a little more research, but there is still, original movies sometimes do come along and they do succeed. They do. Or, and it's not always about, you see the high number, but something like Poor Things. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it's up to worldwide, but
about 30 million.
Yeah.
Or worldwide, no, I'm sorry. 30 million is about the U.S.
U.S.
So I'm sure it's much more.
Much more worldwide. So that's a success because you're talking a small scale, much smaller budget. And I think that was adapted from a book, but obviously there's no big IP hype behind Poor Things. So it's like stuff does still come along and succeed. But the battle, like you said, the battle of original versus pre-existing content is always going to be an uphill fight. And that, there are some people that have, Quentin Tarantino is a good example. He makes almost all original stuff and he succeeds. Nolan doesn't only do original. Obviously he's done Batman and stuff like that, but a lot of it
largely original.
He's obviously a massive success. So there is successes,
right?
But it definitely feels like, like when I was in high school, like when I first got into movies and box office and stuff. Here's an example. This is the most random example, but I was watching. I don't know if you remember this movie. It's from like 1997, I think. It's called Breakdown with Kurt Russell.
Yes.
That movie came out when I was in high school. I was super into like box office and numbers then, and I was really developing into a full-blown movie nerd at that time. Went to the theater to see it. Good movie, by the way. And it succeeded. Like it wasn't it wasn't like the top 5 of the year, but it made money. It was a successful movie. It opened in like April, so it came out before the big summer hype because that movie knew what it was. Like we are not ready to compete against, Men in Black or whatever the big movie was that summer. So they picked like that early April time slot. And that movie just chugged along and made moderate amounts of money each weekend for several weekends and turned into a success. So movies can creep in. Of course, this was a much different time. I'm talking when I was 17 years old versus being 43 now. So maybe movie, audience habits have changed because back then it did seem much more likely that a smaller original movie like that could come out and be a success.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You know, and it had Kurt Russell, who's a name, but he wasn't a mega, like, guaranteed to draw people to the theater. But, and I can think of a million more examples when I was younger of just these original movies that would come out and succeed. Mm-hmm. And it seems like it's more of a risk now. Of course, this is also the pre-Marvel days and everything when full IP just really took over everything. So,
yeah. And, you know, we could probably come up with some reasons why in the 90s, movies made for adults were making more money than movies made for adults now.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the quality of streaming and the home experience. Mm-hmm. You know, when we were in the 90s, the home movie experience wasn't the greatest.
It wasn't.
You know,
threw that VHS in and it was grainy and...
Yeah, there was a lot more motivation to go enjoy a movie in the theater. And now, like, home theater experiences can be pretty impressive.
They can.
And so I think a lot of adults are going, like, I've got my home. I've got my couch that I'm
not leaving this house.
Set up. Everything's streaming here. Mm-hmm. And so adults are just much less inclined to go out to the movies.
They are.
And that's why I always say teenagers with their expendable time, expendable money, and they need somewhere to go to get out of their houses. That's why they drive the market.
And like Bill Simmons always says on the rewatchables, and I can agree with him completely, in the 80s and 90s, we just didn't have a lot going on.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, I'll go to the movies. What else am I going to do? You know, there just wasn't as much going on. We weren't as busy. We didn't have the distraction of phones and social media. So we'd just go to the movies. And, you know, I've said it before on here. I just go to the movies and whatever was playing, I went to see. That's how I ended up seeing, you know, Metro with Eddie Murphy in the movie theater. Because I drove to the movie theater one day when I was a teenager, and that's what was on. So that's what I watched.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, I could be mistaken too, but I also feel like movies weren't made so much for the financial reasons as they are now. And marketing wasn't manipulative like it is now. Mm-hmm. Like, what I mean by that is, there's been several recent movies, for example, that are musicals that don't advertise that they're musicals. Why? Because, you know, Mean Girls is a musical. Wonka, I didn't know till like a couple days ago. Wonka is a musical.
I didn't know that.
They like break out into song, and I'm like, they don't tell you because musicals don't perform as well. Mm-hmm. They just want to get you into the. And then I feel like in the 90s, they weren't trying to trick audiences like that.
Here's my movie.
Yeah,
go see it. Don't go see it. But here's my movie.
Very straightforward. In fact, something from back in those days that just isn't around anymore, and I don't know. It's probably a good thing, but I kind of miss it. Is the voice guy from the previews who tells you what the movie is? Yes, you know, like he comes on with this deep voice and says, you know, there was a man who did this. You know, and they're going to tell you what the movie's
like,
about. So
he got me, like I'm hooked.
And you go, okay, I know exactly what I'm getting when I go to that movie. And now the marketing's catered to, what do I need to show people that's going to make them show up to the movie?
And give us that big opening weekend.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I kind of miss the just the honesty and the directness and the, like, you could almost call it naive. It's almost felt like the movie business didn't realize that it needed to worry so much about money. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they did. So there's people behind the scenes that did, but now
we just didn't maybe know as much about it.
Yeah.
You know, another theory I have too about like people's willingness to go out to the theaters. I'll try to explain this the right way. When I was younger, let's say like Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example. When I was younger, obviously there was no so right now, like The Rock. Let's say The Rock as an example, and I like some of his movies. I'm not picking on The Rock. He's everywhere. He is everywhere. If you follow him on Instagram, he is constantly on there, and he's telling you what his next 5 movies are, and he's showing you like little bit by little. Like I remember when he was doing Skyscraper. And I was following him like on Instagram, like every day. Okay, we're back on the set of Skyscraper. Today we're filming this really cool stunt where this is what, and you just know so much. And he's everywhere. He's on wrestling. He's on Jimmy Fallon. He's on social media. When I was younger, if Arnold Schwarzenegger had a movie coming out, it was like, oh my gosh, I get to go see Arnold Schwarzenegger because he wasn't everywhere. Mm-hmm. Stallone wasn't everywhere. I didn't know what he was doing every day. I didn't know his next 6 movie projects that were coming out. So it did feel like it was like there was more like I want to go, like it's like hanging out with a friend that you don't ever get to see. Yeah. It's like when when Kindergarten Cop came out, you're like, I'm gonna go see that because I just want to see Arnold. up on screen. I don't get to see Arnold that often. He only does a movie every couple of years. And in between those movies, I don't see him all over the place, on my phone, on my TV. I don't know what he's doing. And now, and I do wonder if that factors in, where we're burnt out almost, or it's like, okay, yeah, I see The Rock all the time. It's not as appealing or it's not as special to see these superstars up on the big screen. I don't know. I do think that plays into it. That's just an opinion.
That I would, I might do something really nerdy and start deep diving into, some of these big box office and who's in them, because, you could make arguments that some of the guys who are still big box office draws stay out of the spotlight a lot. I mean, my mind immediately went, for whatever reason, to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Leo and Brad, two of the biggest stars. And it's like, you don't get a lot of Leo and Brad content outside of their movies.
Right.
And so, it still seems like we talk about all the time, the importance of mystery with movie characters. Sometimes there's the importance of mystery with your movie stars. You want them to be like people that you don't really get to know as people. You just get to see them up on the screen being these characters.
Yeah. And I just think that's definitely been lost. And in the 80s and 90s, when I would go see a movie, there was just that feeling that you don't quite get now. Like I said, like you sit there and watch Arnold, and you're just in awe because Arnold's up on the screen. And he is this larger, like I remember feeling that way when I went to see True Lies. Where it was like that movie starts and, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you're like, yes. Like you knew he was in it, but it's like you see his name up on that screen, and then he pops up. And that was enough. Like you were just hyped. And it wasn't, it's like now, and I don't mean to pick on The Rock, because I actually like The Rock, but you're like, yeah, man, like I see you all the time, all over. Like, it's like the how can I miss you if you won't go away type of deal.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe this isn't a bad thing, but he seems weirdly approachable. Like you feel like if you saw The Rock in public, like you'd be allowed to go up and just be like, hey man, what's up? Give him a high five.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'll
take a selfie with you.
If I saw Brad Pitt in real life, I'd be like, it's Brad Pitt. Don't look.
Yeah.
Don't let him see you looking.
Yeah.
Like you can't talk to Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And
maybe that does, like just some of the mystique around movie stars is gone now because we get to view them because they let us in, they give us glimpses of their life.
They're of the generation where you're a brand. You're not just an actor, you're a brand. And I've got to build my brand.
And that's The Rock.
Out there. Yes. And The Rock is a brand. And
kudos to him. He's probably got $1 trillion.
Yes, he probably does. But man, we're just going to be old school. We're always going to be drawn to those guys that you don't.
That's just a theory I have. Yeah. That maybe just the accessibility we have to movie stars now has lowered the appeal of like, man, if I don't go see this Arnold movie in the theater, who knows when I'll see Arnold again? Yeah. And now you don't have to worry about that. You go, well, I'll just catch The Rock, when he goes live on Instagram in the morning.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Rock, if you listen to this, please don't come beat me up. I'm not trying to be mean to you.
You seem like a really cool guy, and I would love to get to hang out with you.
Yeah, come on the podcast if you want to.
And I think that you are really good in movies.
I do too.
You need some better movies.
He does, but I think he more than holds his own in movies. I actually, not too long ago, I watched Skyscraper. Yeah. For what it is, it's a good movie, I think. It's fine. Yeah. He's not an embarrassment. He's good.
No, yeah. I think he's, we could have the same conversation about The Rock that we had about Jason Statham at the beginning. Like, he's chosen his lane, and it's probably what worked best for him career-wise, but there could have been an alternate universe where he says, I want to do some more serious, challenging roles. And, I just think of, like, Batista.
Yeah, Dave Batista.
He's
doing really well.
He's choosing
he's
really
challenging himself.
Stuff.
Have you seen Knock at the Cabin?
Yeah,
he's really good in that.
He
movie.
is, and
it's quiet.
And the first one I saw him be kind of like that is the Blade Runner sequel, Blade Runner 2049. And I'm like, could The Rock have chosen movies like that where he's doing these really quiet, kind of thoughtful parts?
Yeah,
absolutely. The Rock could do that.
He could do that.
Yeah.
But kudos to Dave Batista.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah,
I think he's good. By the way, I do want to report to you that you may turn against The Rock because he's doing the live action Moana.
Yeah.
I know that's one of your biggest movie pet peeves, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I wish that. Talk about things I wish would go away fast. That is very high on my list.
I'm going to be very upset when that movie makes $1 billion. very upset. And then there's like 5 movies out at the same time that are making nothing that I'm very upset are making nothing. All right, so the last 2 movies that I saw in theater, the 2 that I saw a double feature of on Wednesday night, these were my 2 movies nominated for Best Picture that I hadn't seen yet that came back into theaters because of the nominations. I was excited to see
that you got to see them.
So it was Anatomy of a Fall and The Zone of Interest. This felt like pretentious movie night for me.
Did you leave with your nose up in the air a little bit?
I'm going to see 2 movies that are foreign films that are mostly subtitled and like very much made for adult audiences.
Did you walk in with like a top hat and a monocle and a cane?
I absolutely did, yes. They told me, you can't smoke that pipe in here, sir. And
so I will not extinguish my pipe.
But both really good movies. Anatomy of a Fall, I think, was just a smart movie. It's a trial movie, and you don't really know the truth of what happened, so you just kind of have to form an opinion as the trial's unfolding. And it's definitely not showy and kind of snappy in any way, like, 'cause it's not a Sorkin courtroom movie where you watch and you're like, oh, this is fun to watch.
Sure.
So it's one of those movies I honestly think I kind of refer to these as like Gatsby movies. And what I mean by Gatsby is the book, The Great Gatsby. I remember in high school having to read it and not enjoying reading the book. Like, I didn't enjoy the story I was reading it. But I always really enjoyed our class discussions about the book, the analysis of the characters, and hey, what's their motivation? What are they doing here? And so that's sort of my reference point for something that was better in talking about an analysis than in the actual experience of it. Now, this movie, actually, I enjoyed watching. It wasn't like I didn't enjoy reading The Great Gatsby, so I'm not saying I didn't enjoy watching Anatomy of the Fall, but I think long term, like, I could see if this movie becomes a movie that like is important to me, it's because I show it to friends and go, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
That would be more of the thing. That would be a draw.
So do you support the Best Picture nomination?
I think so. Yeah. With the 10 nominations, like it
doesn't stick out in a bad way.
It's probably like 5th or 6th for me.
Okay, so it belongs in the conversation, you think?
Yeah, and I think Sandra Huller, or is it Sandra or Sandra Huller, one of those two, she was nominated for Best Actress.
Deserved.
She did really well.
Good.
She was also in the second movie that I saw, which was The Zone of Interest.
Oh, I didn't realize that she's in both.
She is. The Zone of Interest is just a different movie. It is an artsy movie.
Yes.
So, and you know it right from the start because the first thing the movie does is like just a black screen and a lot of like audio.
Yeah.
It's like the sound of, when the screen finally comes on, it's this family's at like a lake on the countryside. So like you're hearing some noise, you're hearing a little bit of score, I think, but the black screen goes on for like an uncomfortably long time, enough for everybody to kind of be looking around going like, is something wrong? Or is this just really pretentious?
So it's very much announcing that it's an art house movie.
And I'm like, are they doing that on purpose? Are they just trying to be like, know what you're in for? You're about to get some art.
This is a smart movie.
And so it's not like a traditional narrative. It really is like you're just observing this German family in their sort of day-to-day life. And what it is it's just a statement on, look how normal they're acting like life is, while they're right next door to a concentration camp at Auschwitz. And the dad of the family is in charge. He runs the concentration camp. And so you never see the horrors inside the concentration camp. It's always sort of in the background. Sometimes you'll hear things. You'll hear maybe a guard shouting at someone. You might hear a gunshot. You'll hear maybe faint screams. Like, it's all sort of faint, where a lot of times you're like, am I hearing that?
Right.
That's
an interesting idea for a movie.
Yeah, it's a quiet movie. The one problem I have with the movie is because it's really quiet at times, and a lot of the things that the movie's trying to make you feel are things happening in the background. You're listening for it, but there was also a louder movie happening in the theater next door. And sometimes you could hear that rumble next door, and I'm going, okay, is that next door or is that the background of this movie? So that was a little tough, but I mean, there's some visuals that are really tough.
Yeah.
Background things happening where like the smoke's rising from the chimneys, and they've talked about what those chimneys are for. They're part of the ovens basically. And you're just like, it kind of gives you this sickening feeling. It's like, we're showing you this, but all you're supposed to be getting is what's happening just on the other side. And so it's to me, was very impactful. It's not a pleasant watch. It's
Right.
not one I walk out and go like, people need to go. You need to go watch this because it's one of those movies. How do I tell you to go watch a movie that you're not going to enjoy?
A feel bad movie.
Yeah. Kind of akin to like Silence by Scorsese. I wasn't walking around going like, you need to see Silence.
Everyone, come on, let's go.
It's more like, if you watch it, it's well made. It's
but
good.
Be prepared.
But it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
It's not even that bad because Silence does show a lot of the stuff that
Silence
you
is
don't want to watch.
Yeah.
This one at least doesn't show it to you, but just knowing it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, the score has this real like menacing, like it almost sounds like a monster like gargling or something, and it just sort of hits you like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to feel like sick, and I kind of do. So it's really effective. So like when I was done with it, I was like, that's a great movie.
Yeah,
because it did exactly what it was trying to do.
Right.
And so I am really curious to see what time is going to do on my perspective in this movie, because it's not going to be one that is revisited a lot. I don't think, because the style it is.
Just because of the material.
So I'm watching going like, would I be okay with it winning Best Picture? In the moment, I'm going, yes, because it's that good. But I do think it's 10 years from now, if it won Best Picture, we'd look back and be like, man, all these good movies that are, people still talk about, and we gave it to the artsy movie, The Zone of Interest. I don't.
And we've seen that happen in past Oscars, and it doesn't go well.
Right. And I don't think that'll happen. We've talked about it again and again. We think it is Oppenheimer. But if The Zone of Interest beat Oppenheimer, in the moment I'll go, I kind of get it. I wouldn't have done it, but I get it. 10 years from now, I think I'll go, God, can you believe it beat Oppenheimer? So it's one of those. Sure. But I definitely think it's a good one for people to see, but just know going in.
Is it black and white?
It's not.
It's not? Okay.
It's actually like pretty colorful. Because again, like one of the things is Sandra Huller's character, who plays the mom of the family, and she's actually kind of actually the central character. Nobody really feels like that much of a main character because it's
more about the story.
Yeah, even the way that the cameras are set up, like they're set up like you're just watching in. It doesn't really like follow characters or like zoom in on their faces very much. So you don't feel like you don't feel like you're really getting like that close or following any one person that much. You feel like an outsider to all of it. So all of the characters feel like they're supporting in the movie. But she has this really vibrant flower garden at her house, and it's weird. It's a weird contrast of like the beauty that they're trying to build in their home
and the horror,
next to the horror that's next door. And one of the main plot points in the movie is the husband gets reassigned, and he's like, he knows he's going to have a hard time convincing his wife to leave this house that they built here. And in fact, when he tells her, she says, well, we don't have to go with you. You can go do your job, and we can stay here at this house, and you can just come visit when you want. And when you're done with your assignment, you can come back to us. And he's like, I never really thought that was like an option, that you would just not go, because she's just so invested in this house. And again, there's little moments throughout that like really, it never directly kind of addresses the stuff that's going on, but things happen. Like early in the movie, somebody brings over a bag, and the mom takes it and dumps it out, and it's all these like dresses. And she tells her staff, who I think are like some Polish ladies, so they're like the house servants. So they're not quite like the Jewish people that are in the concentration camp, but they're lesser, to them. And she goes, pick out one, everybody. And then she goes upstairs and pulls out of a bag a nice fur coat. And she's like trying it on and modeling it. And you realize like, oh, these were taken from the Jewish people at the camp, and they know what's going on. But this is like, their response to it is just, oh, we got some new clothes from these people. And it's, oh man, it's
I just love the idea of you seeing that movie and The Beekeeper in the same weekend.
Yes. Yeah.
Two polar
slightly
opposites.
Different movies.
Yeah. But going back to like our box office discussion, I am glad to see movies like this that have gotten a little bit of a boost from their Oscar nominations, and like that's a win. I think people going out to see smart movies and intelligent, well-made movies.
And that was one thing that we probably should have brought up with the box office discussion at the beginning with the Apple movies. Is I do think that Apple is much more content with any financial struggles for Killers of the Flower Moon once it got the Oscar recognition, because studios they love being able to say like we're an Oscar nominated studio and we got to. And so
definitely, I think of that
Killers
as
of the Flower Moon. I'm sure in Apple's eyes, they're like, were 100% worth the investment.
Yeah.
We got the attention we wanted from the people we wanted. We wanted this to be an Oscar-nominated movie.
It was.
Napoleon
That's the
failed
problem.
on both fronts.
That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem where Napoleon, did neither. Didn't bring in the money or the acclaim and the Oscar recognition. So yeah, but you're right. I do remember early on reading when Killers of the Flower Moon. I think even before it came out, I think Apple even were pretty open and honest. We're like, look, we'll eventually get our money back from this movie. And maybe they're just kind of playing it off so it doesn't. It's not like, yep, we took a huge hit, but they kind of the vibe I guess I got from reading this article was kind of like what you were just saying, like we wanted to pour this money into this movie. We wanted Scorsese. We wanted the story to be able to be told, and it has brought a lot of positive attention to that story, which a lot of people didn't know about. But yeah, to me, Napoleon's the big loser in that because it did neither and was a far, far, far inferior movie to Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah. Well, I wondered if being sort of a free-form conversation and not really having much set to talk about it, we might actually have a shorter pod today. But no, alas.
Never underestimate how much we can ramble on about movies.
You get us talking about movies, we will talk.
I didn't think I'd go off on a rant about the 1997 movie Breakdown with Kurt Russell, but lo and behold, I did.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff, though. But you know what? Sometimes this is the most fun we have having a podcast where we go, let's just talk about all the different stuff.
Maybe we got to commit to like once every couple of months, just be like, let's just turn on the microphones and talk.
Yeah. Speaking of having something that we're going to plan to do more often or coming up. So this is an idea I had this week and texted you about. It occurred to me just randomly late one night that, man, 1999 was 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, 1999 is kind of a famously good year in movies. So all those movies from 99 are turning 25 years old this year, which for whatever reason, like big anniversaries, 25 always seems like a more profound one than 20 or even 30.
I agree.
25, just that quarter century mark. And so I was like, man, maybe what we should do is revisit a bunch of these 99 movies and like talk about them. And so I texted you and said, I think we should do a monthly thing. We'll backdate January because we already missed that one, but we can make it up. And we'll each pick 12 movies from that year. And like once a month, we'll go, okay, here's my movie for the month. Here's you tell me yours. We'll both rewatch them. And then we'll do a podcast where we talk through 2 99 movies on their 25th anniversary year and just kind of judge, like, first off,
do they hold up?
Yeah. How did you feel about it when it came out? Does it hold up? Yeah. How are you feeling about it now? Like,
let me tell you,
this movie?
When I got my phone out and I saw like a somewhat lengthy text from you, I was very happy because I thought he has to be texting me. Like you do the thing where you just kind of glance and you can see it's a lengthy text, and I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And I was at work and I was immediately like going on break. And I went and sat in the break room to read and absorb your text. And I feel like it was pretty quick that I responded back to you like,
did.
Great idea. Love it. Let's do it. And then immediately started thinking of movies I was going to pick.
Yeah. Honestly, my initial thought was we'll pick like 12 movies and maybe we'll go back and forth. I'll pick one, then you pick one. And there were so many movies.
We could probably not overlap.
I was like, let's both pick. And then, and then it will get us to more movies. And my list is going to be pretty balanced of movies that I'm like, these are movies that I love, and so I want us to rewatch them. And then some movies that I'm like, I haven't seen this in forever, and I'm curious about.
Me too.
So there's even a couple I haven't, I've got my list, but I've not like real set on it.
Same.
So I've got a couple that I'm like, I never saw a couple of these movies. Maybe I'll pick 1 or 2 of these I never saw from this year and say like, let's see, if I really missed something by not seeing that one.
I think I'm most excited to see just what 25 years of perspective has done to some of these movies. There's one in particular, I won't say it, but I'm really excited to compare, like you said, what it was like in 1999 versus right now. I'm very excited.
So what we'll try to do is announce what those movies are in advance so that if anybody wants to watch as well, which I didn't, ask you to be prepared today, so I won't necessarily ask you to do it unless you just have your pick that will be your first pick.
I know what my first pick is.
All right, you want to go ahead and share it?
My first pick is going to be the Blair Witch Project. And I'm sorry to do this to you. I know you don't like horror, but I think what a fascinating thing to look at 1990, from 1999 versus now, and a movie that's gone through, initial acclaim, and then as we often see because of the success of it, the backlash. and then kind of a reevaluation. And I'm really excited to kind of walk through all that.
That was on my list of like, it was on my long list of like, should I? And I had the same thought. I had the same thought of like, this was such a phenomenon.
It was a phenomenon.
That I was kind of like 25 years later, how well is this going to hold up too? So I had a very similar thought.
Great.
My first movie, I think I'm just going to go right off the bat with the movie that was the first one I thought of that I've seen a bunch, but I actually haven't seen in a long time. Fight Club.
Yeah.
By Fincher. And I'm very curious to see how Fight Club hits me now.
We'll talk about a movie that has people have a lot of opinions on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll both get on that. We'll both watch Blair Witch Project and Fight Club.
No
and
problem.
Then in the next week or two, that will be our podcast, is visiting those movies.
Listen, this is why you are the head of this operation, because you come up with great ideas.
Well, you know, I appreciate that.
It's a great idea. And I mean, just instant excitement when you sent me that text. And like I said, just to then versus now, and what has time done to these movies, and do they deserve the reputation they have, or do they not? You know, just so many fun avenues to go down.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. We do have coming sometime soon. We've been teasing this for a while, but sometime soon
coming.
We are tackling the Marvel universe. We've got a special guest coming on for that who is more than qualified to be our third person in the Marvel discussion.
I can't wait. A lot of interesting things to talk about with Marvel, especially right now.
Yeah.
Where it's really, like I said, on an earlier pod, they took their first major loss back in November with the Marvels. And it's not all roses right now. It's not all sunshine and rainbows right now for Marvel.
Right.
And funny, as we're recording this tonight, the Deadpool 3 trailer drops, which I've already seen people being like, maybe this will be the thing that turns Marvel back around to the glory days. So,
yeah, I have my doubts. Just not about Deadpool 3, but that the glory days are re-attainable.
I don't think I don't want to give too much away. We'll save it. I don't think they can go back to the heights they were at, and we'll talk about it in much more detail. So.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives some people some things to be looking forward to.
And I like the idea of being able to tell people specific movies we're going to be talking about, Fight Club and Blair Witch. We got Dune Part 2 coming out in what are we, probably 3 weeks away from that?
Yeah.
My plan is to see that in IMAX.
I plan to do that as well. Yeah. So lots of things to be excited about. And we appreciate it if you guys stuck with us this long through our free-form conversation.
How long did we talk for? Do you know? Like probably an hour?
Well, the recording is at an hour and 18 minutes. It's probably about 5 minutes before we really got going, but
because of our technical difficulties and my having the microphone way too far away.
So an hour and a quarter. That's
awesome.
Yeah, but thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks for letting us ramble. We appreciate it.
We'll see you next week.
Absolutely.